to make mistakes. You know what that means? Don't expect perfection from anyone. One of the challenges we have in the body of Christ is that people expect so much from people. He said, but is he not a pastor? He expects so much. But he is my HOD in church. He is a leader in church. He expects so much. People expect so much. Now listen, when you come to the realization that men can make mistakes, when you come to the realization that men sometimes they can walk in errors. Why? Even though they are perfect, they are trying to strive for perfection in their heart, they cannot be perfect in their head. So they can still make mistakes because they have not put on immortality. When you come to this realization, you begin to give room to people to make mistakes. And when you come to a place in your life where you give room to people to make mistakes, you will never be disappointed at anyone. When people do anything, you just remember, he's a man and he can make mistakes. Oh, he just backstabbed about you. He's a man. He can make mistakes. Oh, he just spoke to you rudely. He's a man. He can make mistakes. When you begin to give room to people to make mistakes, you will walk in this nature of God. You will find yourself walking in peace. You will find yourself loving people at all times. Number two, even though you are going to give room to people, number two, don't focus on their mistakes. Focus on their strengths. Now listen, one of the things I've always said about people is that everybody have their strengths. God has given us gifts, given us skills, given us talents. Man is loaded. I'm telling you, every man is loaded. Loaded. And if you understand that even though the person makes mistakes, all right, but this person also have his area of strength, and you rather focus on the area of strength of the individual, you are not focusing on the weaknesses of the individual, you'll be able to get along. You see, the reason why some couples, when you find people separating and they're having problems, a man and a woman, they've been married for 5 years, we hear all sorts. You hear somebody who's been married for 10 years, 15 years, and they're separated, and you're wondering, how come first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, what happened? And then 15 years down the lane is now they're separating, children are already in the university, and then you are hearing about divorce. So first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, how come they were able to go through? Now when it happens within the first 5 years, you can even say, oh, maybe these guys, they didn't really understand themselves, they were trying to still try to get to know each other. But how do you explain 20 years of marriage and then there's a breakdown? How do you explain it? How do you explain a guy and a lady who have been close? They've been friends for 10 years. 10 years. And then eventually got married. 2 years after marriage, then they separate. How do you explain it? 10 years, they've been friends. 2 years after marriage, I'm not doing anymore. How do you explain it? You see, let me tell you, the reason is very simple. People tend to focus on the mistakes of others. When you begin to, I'm not saying you downplay these things. I need you to understand the balance. I'm not saying, because pastor said, you have to tolerate people and all that. So when somebody is obviously unruly, somebody is obviously walking in error, you are not calling the person to order. That's not what I'm trying to say. You call them to order. But that does not mean that you have to focus on the person's mistakes. Focus on the person's mistakes means acting with the mindset of the person's weaknesses. You have an expectation of the person. So you are a husband, you are coming into the house from work, you have an expectation of what your wife is going to say. You already have an expectation in every relationship. Whether you are friends, you already have a mindset. This is how he's going to behave. So when you say some stuff, you already have an expectation. This is how he's going to respond to this particular stuff I just said. You know why? Because you are focusing on individuals' weaknesses, on the mistakes, not on the strengths. You see, if God focuses on our weaknesses, he will not use anybody. Are you hearing me this morning? Are you still here? Are you sure you are here? If God focuses on our weaknesses, he's not going to use anybody. Don't think there is one man of God that is so good. None. There is no man of God anywhere that was so good. God just decided not to look at the weaknesses, not to look at the mistakes, and then God decided to focus on the strengths, and then he decides to use. When God picked Paul in Acts chapter 9 from verse number 1, he was on his way to Damascus. So how will God choose such a man who was literally going to go and kill those who have received Jesus? Because God looked away from his weaknesses and God began to look at his strengths. If you can begin to look away from the mistakes of people, when you begin to look away from the weaknesses of people and begin to focus on the strengths of people, I'm telling you, you're going to have relationships come into your life that will become elevators of destiny. And that will be somebody's testimony.